Discover the incredible, heartwarming tales of 30 amazing lives transformed by cold in the 1700s. In the heart of a small colonial town, where the chill of winter seeped into every crack and crevice, lived Daniel, a humble blacksmith. His forge was his world, a flickering dance of flames against the cold, a sanctuary where he shaped iron and dreams alike. But outside, bitter winds howled like lost souls, biting at the town and its struggling people. The snow piled high, blanketing hope and suffocating the spirit of the community. Each day, Daniel fought to keep his family warm, his strong hands tirelessly molding metal into tools that many deemed unworthy. Tension simmered as affluent merchants from the city laughed at local craftsmen, their ridicule echoing in Daniel's ears like the clang of his hammer. As the days grew colder, life turned tragic. Clara, his youngest daughter, caught a terrible illness, a cruel twist of fate exacerbated by the relentless cold. Her laughter, once the sweetest sound, faded into silence, replaced by painful coughs that scrabbled against the walls of their home. With each day that passed, Daniel felt the warmth leaving his family's hearth. Tears pricked his eyes as he watched his wife, Mary, mainstay of their family, slowly shatter under the weight of loss. They fought, desperately trying to bridge the distance that tragedy laid between them, but misunderstandings rooted in grief only deepened their cracks. The bonding threads of loyalty were stretched thin, fraying under the icy pressure flourished by harsh realities. Then, as if destiny handed him a lifeline, a wealthy city merchant offered Daniel a promising job in a bustling port town. Wealth awaited him like a shining beacon. Yet, the thought of leaving Clara, even in her absence, sent dread crashing through him. He wrestled with this choice, the weight of ambition teetering precariously against the love for his family. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. As Daniel toiled in his forge, a flicker of warmth enveloped the town. Neighborhood gatherings began to spring up like wildflowers through the frost. Neighbors shared what little they had, rallying together against the cold disdain of their city counterparts. Daniel could feel the pulse of community awakening around him, a fierce beacon of hope amidst the frigid grasp of winter, but beneath this collective spirit loomed the discomfort of societal division. Could they truly stand united when the hurt from the past and the resentment against the merchants loomed ever larger? In this moment of crisis, an unexpected reunion transpired between Daniel and the town's oldest veteran, a man whose wisdom ran deep. He carried stories of bygone days, tales of resilience stitched into the fabric of the community, yet, as the winds whipped outside, the questions loomed heavy in Daniel's heart. Could they bolster their strength to push against the currents of neglect? And in the shadows of loss, could he find the path to redemption, not just for his family, but for all of them? The stakes were high, and the embers of his forge burned brighter than ever. Hovering in the balance was the very definition of success. What awaited him at the crossroads of ambition and loyalty? Time would tell, but for now, the chill remained. The clamor of laughter filled the air beneath the dim glow of lanterns as townsfolk gathered around a makeshift fire. Daniel watched from the shadows, his heart swelling with unrecognized warmth. It had been a long time since he felt such belonging, an influence of community sweeping through the cold like a gentle breeze. The laughter of neighbors mingled with the crackling flames, while the chill of winter tried to pierce their joyful cocoon. As he stepped closer, it became clear that even amidst their struggles, the people were refusing to surrender to despair. They were sharing stories, successes, and failures, reminding one another of their shared humanity. His chest tightened with pride and sadness, a complex pang of nostalgia for Clara, whose vibrant spirit had once danced among them. He thought of her laughter that had once blended with the winter wind, and it cut deeper than any frost. "Daniel," a voice called out, pulling him from his reverie. It was Old Man Jenkins, the veteran with a twinkle in his eye that belied his age. "Come join us. We could use your strength around the forge, even if it's just for a bit of camaraderie." Daniel hesitated. The shadows under his eyelids tugged at the memory of his daughter. Yet, here was his community, extending an invitation laced with understanding and warmth. It felt like a lifebuoy tossed into a stormy sea. With measured steps, he walked into the light. The moment he entered the ring of firelight, applause erupted around him. The familiar faces, the warmth of shared stories, carved a corridor through the bitter cold surrounding them. "I see Daniel the blacksmith stands among us today." Jenkins raised an arm, and everyone erupted in cheers. Feeling a fresh resolve, Daniel took a seat near the fire. As he settled down, he listened intently. They shared tales of long-gone winters, of triumph over adversity, each story leaving an imprint on Daniel's heart, all woven into the very fabric of this community. He found himself laughing, feeling lighter, as if each chuckle could thaw the ice gripping his soul. But as night deepened, the weight of decisions loomed like a storm cloud above him. Should he pursue the job offered by the merchant? A chance at wealth and stability. Or should he invest in the unity blossoming around him? With Clara gone, he was unmoored, drifting between two worlds, one of promise and one of connection. Suddenly, a hush fell over the crowd. A woman, Mary Collins, stood up, her hands clasped resolutely. "I propose we create a new market. A place where we showcase our crafts, gather our strength. Let us show those merchants what our hands can create, what our hearts can hold." The crowd buzzed with excitement, voices rising in agreement, sharp relief slicing through the frost. Daniel felt something shift within him, a spark ignited. Could their collective spirit outshine their struggles? But doubts remained. They still bore the scars of past grievances. Would division extinguish this newfound light? The thought sent tremors racing through him. As the discussions heated up, Daniel grappled with an inner battle. To invest in a dream of ambition or to weave himself into the fabric of hope? And just as he thought he could grasp clarity, a chilling gust of wind blew through, rattling the lanterns and silencing the crowd. In that moment, a shadow darted past, something in the darkness, something unrecognizable. Did anyone see that? He breathed, his heart racing, uncertainty flaring in his chest. What was lurking in the shadows, and how would it affect the fragile community rising from the ashes of despair? The silence hung heavy, broken only by the crackling fire. Daniel could feel every eye turning toward the darkness where the shadow had vanished. Whispers rippled through the crowd, a mix of confusion and anxiety. He caught Mary's gaze. Her face was flushed, yet her eyes sparkled with courage. "Maybe it was just an animal," she suggested, attempting to ease the tension. But Daniel sensed a deeper fear. The chill in the air wasn't just from winter. It seeped from a history of hardships, betrayal, and loss, cold as the night itself. "So let's keep talking," Old Man Jenkins said, breaking the uneasy quiet. "Whatever it was, it can't stop us." The crowd nodded, but Daniel could see doubt skimming the surface of their resolve. He wanted to believe in Jenkins' optimism, to cling to it like a lifeline. "What if we set aside our dreams of a market for now?" he proposed, voice steady yet uncertain, and focus on building bonds first. His heart raced at the thought of steering them away from ambition, but perhaps it was what they needed, a foundation of trust within the community. "Exactly," Mary chimed in. "Let us start with dinners. Every week, we pull together our produce, our skills bring us all together," Jenkins finished, enthusiasm rekindling in his voice. "Yes. A communal meal. We can share stories, remember our roots." Norman, a farmer with roughened hands, nodded with determination. "We work well when we're together. Let us remind ourselves of that." Daniel felt the weight on his chest ease, a flicker of hope igniting. A communal feast could breathe life into their community, not just materially but spiritually. As they traded ideas, the frost around them felt a little less biting, their voices mingling harmoniously under the lantern light, but as plans formed, Daniel couldn't shake the loneliness creeping back in. Would a mere meal truly hold them together? Or was he grasping at fleeting shadows, comfort born of fear? After all, a market was the promise of economy, a solidarity among skilled crafts. Lost in thought, he leaned closer to the fire, the warmth momentarily soothing his spirit. That was when a low growl, deep and unsettling, split the air, catching everyone off guard. What was that? Someone gasped, eyes wide. Mary's face went pale, a stark contrast to the fire's glow. Daniel clenched his fists. "Stay close," he urged, protective instinct flaring. "Let us stick together." The community buzzed with anxious murmurs as they huddled closer, glancing at the edges of the flickering light. What was out there, lying in wait just beyond their sunset sanctuary? Daniel's heart pounded, each beat in tandem with the rising tension. In that moment, he realized their connection to each other was their true protection. But would it be enough? His thoughts raced, suddenly spurred by an instinctual fear. What if their fragile unity faced a threat beyond mere shadows? Together, he shouted over the fear, "We will face whatever may come." The fire crackled louder as if urging them on, illuminating the worry in their eyes, yet reflecting determination. They looked at one another, hearts beating in unison, yet somewhere, the gravity of their situation loomed like the winter's breath. Just then, a figure emerged from the shadows, cloaked and moving with an unsettling grace. "Who's there?" Daniel shouted, voice resonant with authority, drawing the community even closer. As the figure stepped into the light, the crowd gasped, and a ripple of collective anxiety washed over them. What truth awaited them in the glow of the fire? Why had this figure come? The figure hesitated at the edge of the fire's glow, a silhouette wrapped in a dark cloak that stirred softly with the wind. Daniel took a step forward, heart racing. He needed to keep the crowd steady. "Identify yourself." He called out again, firmer this time, his voice echoing into the silence that had fallen upon them like a blanket. "Please, don't be afraid." The voice was calm but threaded with a deep weariness. The figure lowered the hood, revealing a young woman with wild, tangled hair framed around her pale face. Her eyes darted nervously amongst the group. "I mean no harm." Mary reached for Daniel's arm, squeezing gently as the tension layered itself thicker around them. "What's your name?" she asked softly, her voice steadier than she seemed. Her gaze was a mixture of concern and curiosity. "Lila," the young woman replied, breathless, as if the act of speaking had cost her more than just words. I've come from a village not far from here." She took a step forward, hesitant yet compelled by something beyond fear. "There are dangers there, things lurking in the dark." "What kind of things?" Daniel felt his pulse quicken, every muscle in his body on high alert. He could see the faces of those around him tighten, the fear returning like an unwelcome guest. Lila glanced over her shoulder, as if expecting shadows to emerge from the thicket. "Wolves. Not just the ordinary wolves, something more cunning, more desperate. They've been attacking livestock, even children." Her voice dropped, each word dripping with dread. Gasps and murmurs rustled through the crowd. Norman's face hardened. "Are you sure? This sounds like tales meant to grip a man's heart." "I wish it were just tales," Lila replied, her eyes filling with tears. "They've taken so much already. We thought we were safe, but they've become bold." Daniel's heart twisted. He glanced at Mary, who looked both horrified and resolute. "We need to act," she said, determination lighting her features. "If this is true, we can't let fear divide us. Lila, we'll protect your village as best we can. We stand together." "Together," Daniel echoed, swallowing his own anxiety. A picture framed itself in his mind. Community, resilience, their lives intertwined. "Let us figure this out now, before it escalates." "But do we have the strength?" whispered someone from the crowd. Hesitation lingered in the air, thick and cloying that he took a deep breath, refusing to let doubt enter the crevices of his determination. We've survived harsh winters and losses before. If we work together, if we stand unified. He looked around at each face turned towards him. We can't let fear defeat us. Lila nodded, her expression softening slightly, as the flicker of hope began to cast shadows from the darkness. Thank you. It's all I could hope for. But as they formulated a plan to fortify their community, Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning, a prologue to worse things lurking just out of sight. Shadows danced just beyond their circle of light, and he wondered if they were truly prepared for what lay ahead. Then, as whispers of action buzzed among them, a distant howl echoed through the trees, a chilling sound that sent shivers down his spine. What was that? Someone murmured. Turning pale, Daniel took a deep breath, bracing himself for what lay ahead. Looks like we're not alone after all. And even as he spoke, something flickered at the edge of his vision, moving with a speed that sent his heart racing. What other secrets did the night hold? What dark threats lurked in the shadows, just waiting for them to let their guard down? The woods held its breath, the night thick like molasses. Daniel's heart hammered in his chest as the howl floated through the air, long and haunting. Everyone stood still, eyes wide and breaths shallow. What was out there? Lila's face turned pale, the flickering light from the fire casting shadows that danced across her features. They're close, she whispered, her voice trembling. I can feel it. Mary stepped forward, the flicker of determination igniting her eyes once more. We need to gather our supplies. If these wolves are indeed a threat, we need to strengthen our defenses. She glanced at Daniel, courage shining bright despite the fear that clamored inside her. Right, he agreed, trying to cling to that same courage. Lila, can you tell us more? How many have you seen? 3, no, 4. They hunt in packs. They're different from what you think of when you hear wolves. These are relentless hungry, she explained, her hands clenching into tight fists. They don't just roam, they attack. They come for whatever they can find. A murmur of panic spread through the crowd. Daniel could see fear etched on every face. People exchanged worried glances, the vulnerability of their lives amplified by Lila's story. We can't just let fear take over, Daniel implored, raising his voice to cut through the rising tide of dread. Fear will take us apart from the inside. Let us use it as our fire instead of fire to defend our homes, our families. He felt empowered by his words, wanting to rally them faster than doubt could settle in again. Norman stepped forward, the skepticism in his eyes softened by the sheen of concern. And we mustn't act without a plan, he said, his voice steady. We need to fortify the village, set traps. If these wolves are as desperate as she says, they will attack our livestock and perhaps our children. We must be ready. Exactly, Mary added, her own conviction growing. We can form watch groups each night. We can gather our axes and pitchforks, anything to defend ourselves. If we work in shifts, we can stay alert. Lila nodded, a spark of gratitude lighting her features. You'd really help? Despite everything? I was afraid you might turn us away, thinking we were just carrying tales. Not when it comes to the safety of others, Daniel said, his voice firm. Let us prove to ourselves that we're stronger than any shadow lurking out there. Together. As the tension in the air began to shift, sparks of hope flickered among the crowd. Every face turned to face one another, connections rebuilding themselves as they pledged to work together, but just then, the howl echoed again, now closer, sharper. A spine-chilling reminder that their time was limited. Gather supplies. Daniel shouted, his heart racing with urgency. We need to act quickly. Everyone sprung into action. Torches were lit, tools were gathered, voices quickened the air with determination. The shadows around them seemed to inch closer, but together, they focused their energy on gathering, fortifying, preparing. Just as a flicker of triumph sparked in Daniel's heart, Lila suddenly caught his eye, her expression suddenly serious. "Daniel, there's something else," she began, but her voice was drowned out by a furious rustling in the bushes nearby. The villagers paused, all eyes turning to where the sound emerged from the very darkness they tried to conquer. "Stay alert!" Daniel yelled as the rustling intensified, shadows pulling closer. What was coming for them? He felt his breath quicken as he strained to make out a shape in the darkness. And the moment he caught sight of gleaming eyes reflecting the firelight, he knew they were not alone. Not anymore. What had they awakened? And would they survive whatever emerged from the dark? The rustling became a chorus of chaos, branches snapping and leaves swirling. Daniel's heart raced as he gripped the makeshift weapon, an old axe, his knuckles white against the wood. The villagers huddled together, eyes wide with both terror and anticipation. "Form a line. Use the firelight as a shield," Daniel shouted, fear electrifying his voice. He could feel the tension rising, charging the air like a thunderstorm ready to break. Every breath felt heavy with the threat of what was lurking just beyond their sight. Then, through the darkness, emerged shadows, more than one, and quickly closing in. They glided low, their bodies sleek and feral, the reflection of firelight dancing off their fur. Daniel's stomach dropped. They weren't just wolves, they were predators, each a mix of sinew and instinct, framed against the night. "Don't let fear take hold," shouted Norman from the back, his voice steady like a lighthouse in a storm. "Focus. On my count, 1, 2, 3. Suddenly, without warning, a cry pierced through the night, a sound neither human nor beast. The wolves clearly heard it too. They hesitated, their glowing eyes locking onto a figure emerging from the thicket. Daniel squinted, willing the darkness to reveal its secrets. And then he saw her. A young girl, no older than 8, stumbling towards them, her face streaked with dirt, arms outstretched as if seeking refuge. "No!" Lila gasped, her eyes widening in horror. "Get her back!" But before anyone could react, the wolves sprang forward. They lunged at the girl with ferocity, but not towards her, rather, they veered off to the side, directly toward a lone animal grazing helplessly nearby. "Hold the line!" Daniel shouted, instinctively stepping forward, axe raised. But fear tangled with confusion, the wolves were ignoring the humans. They were hunting something else. The villagers stood frozen, eyes darting between the girl and the marauders. Just then, Lila broke through the line, rushing to the girl. "Get back! It's not safe!" she cried desperately. "No!" The girl whimpered, taking a step toward the wolves, stubborn defiance in her tiny frame. "They're hungry. They just want food." Heartbeats echoed in the silence, each thud a reminder of their perilous situation. "Lila, get her behind the fire," Daniel urged, his voice edged with panic, wondering why someone would step into the path of danger. Lila, more determined than ever, knelt beside the girl. "You don't want to be out here. Come with me." She grasped the girl's hand, but the little one resisted, her eyes fixed on the wolves as they settled back, glancing from the grazing animal to the humans. "Why do they hunt like this?" Daniel murmured, confusion scrunching his brow. "Wolves don't usually act this way. They usually avoid people." "They're desperate," Lila breathed, glancing between the girl and the advance of the wolves. "They aren't just attacking for food anymore, they're fighting for survival." Just as the reality of their situation sank deeper, a low growl issued from behind them. Daniel turned, and the air turned electric with threat. One particularly large wolf, fur matted with dirt and something darker, stepped forward from the group, a flicker of recognition passing through its eyes. "Prepare!" Norman called sharply, raising his weapon high. But Daniel couldn't shake the feeling that the wolves weren't just mindless beasts. There was an intelligence, a need that seemed far more complex than he ever expected. "We need to protect the girl," Daniel shouted suddenly, the urgency igniting his resolve. His heart raced. Would they find a way to survive not just against the wolves, but protect one another from the storm brewing between instinct and desperation. But what if their choices that night could bring heart and resolution rather than fear and violence? As the wolves moved closer, Daniel stood at the edge of a decision that could change everything. Did he have the courage to see this through? And would any of them find a way to understand one another before it was too late? The wolf shifted, its eyes boring into Daniel as if gauging the threat he posed. Time froze, the forest quieted, as if holding its breath. Daniel tightened his grip on the axe, heart pounding. He sensed more than fear, he sensed a primal connection, a recognition that both sides were fighting for existence. "Get back!" Lila shouted, pulling on the girl's arm. The little one looked back at Lila, a flicker of understanding sparking in her eyes. But instead of retreating, she stood defiantly. "They're not monsters. They just want to eat." Maybe, Daniel whispered, fighting against the weight of fear. "But they're still dangerous." Around him, the villagers quivered, caught between instinct and compassion. Some shifted nervously, eyes darting. Others clutched their weapons tighter, the lines of courage and desperation beginning to blur. In that moment of stillness, Daniel's voice broke through. "Listen. We have to let them know we mean no harm." It felt absurd to suggest it to communicate with creatures that had a one-track mind driven purely by instinct. But there was something in the way the wolves hesitated, as if considering their next move. Lila looked at Daniel, her brows furrowing. "What do you have in mind?" "Maybe if we show we're not a threat," Daniel trailed off, heart racing at the reckless thought. "We could throw something, distract them." From behind, a villager named Marcus gasped. "Are you mad? They'll attack us." "They probably will anyway," Daniel argued, feeling a mix of fear and determination surge through him. "If that girl believes we can save them, maybe it's worth the risk." Around them, hope flickered amidst the dread. As the wolves shifted their gaze back toward their grazing target, Daniel grabbed a bundle of sticks and stones to toss into the forest, concerned that whatever chance they had was slipping away. With one quick motion, he heaved the stones past the wolves, toward the deeper shadows. The wolves turned, their primal instincts kicking in. For a moment, they hesitated, weighed their options. Daniel could see the muscles ripple beneath their fur, taut with tension. The girl gasped, eyes wide as the wolves shifted, torn between the potential food and the strange creatures before them. "Now! Everyone back up!" Norman shouted, and the villagers retreated, not taking their eyes off the wolves. With a sudden burst of energy, the pack dashed after the noise, confusion lighting their movements. The large wolf lingered a moment longer, its eyes still fixed on Daniel, an understanding shimmering between them before it finally dashed into the trees, following its kin. The moment hung heavily, breath being collectively drawn. Daniel turned, seeing the girl finally move away from her defiance. "Come with us," Lila urged again, her voice softer this time, but filled with a warmth that cut through the panic. The little girl, looking up at them, slowly took a step back toward safety. "It's pretty wild out here," Daniel said, a nervous laugh escaping him. "Never thought I'd be trying to negotiate with wolves." "Yeah, some negotiation," Marcus muttered, still shaking. "Maybe it wasn't a negotiation but a lifeline," Lila replied quietly, determination glinting in her eyes. "They're more than just beasts. They're just like us trying to survive. What if we learn how to coexist instead of fight?" Daniel felt the weight of her words. Can we really change their fate and ours? The night felt charged with a new understanding, a stirring of hope. As they gathered in the firelight, watching the darkness settle back into its silence, the girl clutched Lila's hand. It felt like the start of something shifting, a different kind of struggle ahead, the challenge of empathy and understanding amidst brewing storms of survival. But even as the tension eased, Daniel knew deep inside that the night was over. Shadows still lingered in the forest. What would tomorrow bring? Would they find a way to forge a path to coexistence, or would their efforts only lead to greater danger? The night hadn't answered any of those questions yet. The crackling fire danced in the cool night air, casting flickering shadows that intertwined with the trees. Daniel glanced around at the villagers. Fear still lingered, an unspoken weight resting among them, but for the first time in a while, he felt a flicker of something else, a sense of unity. "We need to keep watch," Norman said, breaking the silence that had settled over the group. He was still shaken but trying to pull everyone together. "If the wolves find food elsewhere, they'll come back. We can't let them near the livestock or the children." Lila nodded, her face lit by the firelight. "But what if we create a barrier? Something they can't cross. We could use the old fencing materials." Her voice was steady, her eyes focused. "It's a risk," Marcus replied, his voice trembling slightly. "What if they find their way around it? Or worse, what if they don't get distracted? They could." He shuddered, unable to finish his thought. Daniel felt a surge of protectiveness. "We have to take that chance. If we show we're willing to help both the wolves and ourselves, maybe there's a way through this. We can't just sit here and wait for things to escalate." The little girl squeezed Lila's hand tighter, her wide eyes absorbing the adults' conversation. Daniel knelt before her, softening his voice. "Hey, do you think the wolves are bad?" She shook her head, her spirit shining. "They're just hungry." Her innocent perspective struck a chord deep within him. He realized that maybe what they faced wasn't simply a clash of survival instincts but a chance to learn from each other. "Right," he said, standing back up. "Let us gather what we can. Wood, old scraps will fortify the area around the livestock." They split into groups, moving with urgency as they compiled materials in the dim light. Daniel worked alongside Lila, their hands busy, but their eyes often meeting, exchanging unspoken encouragement. As the hours passed, they forged a semblance of safety, crafting barriers that felt, if not impenetrable, at least a deterrent. Lila shared tales of growing up around the wolves, her knowledge of their behavior calming the fears of the adults. When they finished, a collective sigh escaped the group. They weren't just protecting their homes, they were taking a stand for a new understanding. Yet, as they settled back around the fire, exhaustion weighing on them, Daniel couldn't shake a feeling of unease. The night was still and heavy, a contrast to the frantic energy they had just displayed, but in that silence, every rustle from the forest felt amplified. "What if we're making things worse?" he thought aloud, voicing what everyone was too afraid to admit. "What if showing compassion just makes us more vulnerable?" His words hung heavy in the air. Lila reached out, placing her hand on his forearm. "Sometimes, vulnerability is what opens the door to real change. We can't let fear decide our course of action. We have to believe we can find a way forward." As Daniel watched her face, the glow from the fire illuminating her determined expression, he felt a swell of hope. But in the distance, a low growl echoed through the trees, shattering the moment of calm. The wolves were close, and with them, an uncertain fate. "Guess we'll find out soon enough," he whispered, pulse quickening as the growl sent chills down his spine. Would their efforts bring about the change they hoped for, or would it only summon the storm they tried to avert? The night had only just begun. The night deepened around them, dark and silent, except for that low growl which had pierced Daniel's chest like a dagger. He turned toward the sound, heart racing. The villagers sat tense, their breaths shallow as if they were all holding onto the same fear. Lila's hand still rested on his forearm, grounding him even as anxiety spiraled. "Stay close," he whispered, his voice barely above a hushed breath. Norman stood, gripping the makeshift spear they had crafted earlier. His knuckles were white under the strain. "We need to keep our eyes on the trees. They won't come from the front." The flickering firelight danced across every worried face, illuminating eyes wide with a mixture of terror and determination. Children clung to their parents, not fully understanding the danger but sensing the weight of their adults' fear. Daniel felt a swell of protectiveness for them all. They had worked hard to create a barrier, but it was just wood and hope against the primal instincts of wild creatures, another growl reverberated through the quiet, closer and lower this time. Daniel swallowed his fear. "Lila, tell them about the wolves." She nodded, a spark of resolve igniting in her gaze. "Wolves are pack animals, they work together. But they're also smart. They'll test our defenses. If they sense a weakness." She trailed off, her expression darkening. "I've seen them howling under the moon," she continued. "It's haunting, but they're not evil. Just scared and hungry, like us." Her words hung in the air, a fragile connection to something larger than their personal fear. They were all just trying to survive. "It's not just about keeping them out," Daniel added, trying to shift the energy. "Maybe it's about understanding them. If they're approaching, there's a reason. Maybe we can make a deal." Norman shook his head, the tension in his shoulders evident. "You think they'll listen? These are wild animals, Daniel. They don't respond to reason." "Maybe they will if we show we mean no harm," Daniel countered, the idea taking root in his mind. "If we take care of what we have, they might just see we're not a threat. We just need to show them." The villagers exchanged glances, some shaking their heads doubtfully, others intrigued. "I don't know," Marcus murmured, worry etched on his face. "What if it doesn't work? What if they come for us anyway?" Daniel felt his pulse quicken when another growl sounded, but this one was followed by more. It wasn't just one, they were gathering. He could see movement in the shadows, flash after flash of white teeth showing through the trees. "Stay together!" he shouted as the shadows grew closer, the weight of fear heavy and palpable. The air was suffocating, thick with a sense of impending chaos. "Lila!" he called, urgency growing as he reached for her. "We can't just wait. If they are hungry, let us find a way to help them. There has to be something around here we can use." Lila returned his stare, her determination clear. "Then let us do it. Let us find a way to offer them something." As they moved to gather what they could, the growls escalated into restless growls and whines, sharp and oddly almost pleading. Between each sound, a whisper of hope lingered, the kind that had settled over this group of villagers, the kind that told them they were more than just scared, they were about to make a stand. But among the looming shadows, and with every rustle in the dark, Daniel wondered if they were opening themselves to the wolves or risking everything in vain. The boundary between man and beast was blurring, and as he raised his makeshift weapon, he felt the creeping fear of an uncertain decision. What would happen if their peace offering was met with anger instead? Would they be prepared for what approached them in the night? The air was electric, and the night was alive with uncertainty. Before he could process what next step they would take, the first wolf stepped into the firelight. An eerie calm enveloped the gathering as they faced the creature, hearts pounding in anticipation. Could kindness prevail against the primal instinct of hunger? Would they find courage or chaos in the coming moments? The tension crackled like the fire, casting sharp shadows against the trees as the first wolf stepped into the flickering light. It paused, sleek and powerful, its eyes locked on Daniel. A heartbeat thudded like a drum in the silence, echoing in the bracing night air. Every villager held their breath, fear mixed with the pulse of hope that ran through the gathering. "Stay calm," Daniel whispered, feeling Lila's hand squeeze his. If they were to face this together, he needed to keep his composure. "We are not your enemy." The wolf shifted, its nostrils flaring as it caught the scent of the humans. Behind it, shadows stirred, pairs of glowing eyes reflecting the firelight, each one full of a fierce hunger that made Daniel's heart race. Slowly, Lila murmured, gathering her composure, "Let's show them we're not a threat." Daniel took a cautious step forward, lowering his weapon but keeping it ready. "We didn't come here to fight," he called out with steady conviction. "We just want to understand you need food, just as we do." The wolf hesitated, tilting its head as if trying to comprehend Daniel's words. It sent Daniel's heart fluttering with a mixture of fear and hope. If they could show these creatures they meant no harm, perhaps a bridge could be built. Then came another low growl from the dark, an urging sound. The tension rippled across the villagers, whispers of uncertainty filled the air. But Daniel stepped further into the firelight, steadying himself against the oncoming storm. "Look! We can help you." With that, he grabbed a few leftover scraps of food they had prepared for their own feast earlier and tossed them into the clearing. The rations scattered near the fire, the wolf's eyes fixed on the offerings as if weighing the danger of the humans against the allure of food. The first wolf moved toward the scraps, hesitantly sniffing them before turning back, skepticism still flickering in its gaze. Daniel felt a pulse of encouragement. "Just a taste," he suggested softly, heart hammering. The other wolves, emboldened by their leader's cautious advance, joined the first, each sniffing at the offerings. The air thickened with tension, but as the lead wolf began to consume a piece, the collective gasps from the crowd transformed into quiet awe. Daniel could sense the shift the sheer act of feeding them was dismantling the fear. The wolves slunk closer, hunger gradually outweighing their caution, gracefully testing the boundaries of their newfound understanding. "See?" Lila breathed, a bright smile cutting through her earlier worry. "They're trusting us." Yet, uncertainty settled as quickly as it had lifted. Daniel watched as the larger wolf cast a backward glance, calculating the risk of venturing further into the warmth of the firelight. The glimmering eyes were filled with something deeper than hunger, perhaps curiosity or something instinctively void of malice. "We should offer them more," Daniel decided, glancing around the villagers. "If we want this to mean something, we must commit to it." He saw hesitation on many faces, fear still tight in their expressions. "But there could be more," Norman said. "What if this attracts others? We don't know if they're aggressive." "They're hungry, just like us," Daniel argued, a fire igniting his spirit. "Just as we came together to survive, maybe there can be a way to live alongside them. We won't find strength by pushing them away." Finally, one of the villagers stepped forth, Mary, her face transforming with determination. "Maybe it's time we tested that strength, Daniel. To show them we mean no harm." With Mary leading, they began gathering the remnants of their feast, from leftover vegetables to dried meat, offering it into the open air. The wolves edged closer, drawn not just by the food, but by the sense of community that thrummed in the air. Each step they took softened the fear wrapped around the villagers' shoulders, but suddenly, a sharp cracking echoed from the tree line. Every head snapped around, hearts racing anew, the fracture of a branch signaling danger. Daniel's heart dropped as a second pack of wolves appeared, their eyes feral and hungry. The lead wolf, now consuming the offered food, raised its head, sensing the encroaching pack. It growled low, a warning rumbling through the night like thunder. "Get ready!" Norman shouted, tension coiling thick across the group. Fears of a fight hung heavy in the air again. "Wait!" Daniel cried. He needed to be louder than fear. This could be the moment. "Let us show them again we mean no harm." He held out his hands, palm up towards the approaching pack, pleading with them to pause like the first had. The atmosphere crackled. Would they listen? Could they see this as a call for unity, a step toward a shared understanding? The ground felt like it was shaking beneath him. The first wolf snarled and jumped protectively between the humans and the new pack. In that moment, the bond between them shifted as the first began to growl, baring teeth, seeming to communicate something innate. "Just trust," Daniel urged softly, feeling the weight of the crowd around him. And to his shock, as the tension hummed thick, the new wolves hesitated. It was a small moment of reprieve, but Daniel felt it like a flicker of light. The shadows in their eyes revealed more than mere ferocity, they reflected intelligence, desperate searches for survival, longing for connection. The first wolf stepped forward hesitantly, head lowered, moving to consume another piece of food as a gesture of peace. Daniel's breath caught in awe. It was working. Their willingness to share could be their salvation, a spark into compassion where desperation had reigned. That moment hung suspended in time, a fragile understanding. It felt electric, a pulse of shared intention. If they could just bridge this divide, perhaps they could unify against the harshness of their world. Together. Lila cried out, her voice breathless with hope. Together we can reforge this bond. For our families and theirs. As if on cue, the wolves moved deeper into the clearing, picking at the food with wary curiosity. The walls between them slackened, a shared trust sparking in unexpected corners of the forest. Daniel stood tall, heart swelling with a surge of exhilaration. The real danger still lurked in the night, but for that moment, a flicker of faith soared amidst the chaos. As the villagers slowly lowered their weapons, Daniel realized they were on the precipice of something new, something profound. With every brave choice they made, they didn't just protect their homes, they began to carve a path toward understanding. Perhaps they could all adapt together, lighting the way through darkness. And in that gathering, with courage entwined among the shadows, unspoken connections deepened. Daniel could feel it, a promise on the wind of a community renewed, a chance at survival deeply anchored in the heart of togetherness. We will redefine coexistence, he thought as the wolves cautiously approached, feeling warmth radiating from those around him, hearts beating together against the night. This was more than survival. This was transformation. Suddenly, a howl pierced the night, a sound not of aggression, but of unity, a call for all to stand together, just the way they were. That's it, Daniel realized with a smile as he looked around the fire-lit circle of villagers and wolves. This was their moment. Maybe, just maybe, they could face whatever was lurking in the shadows together. It was this very spirit that ignited a heartwarming spark of hope. Every breath in sync, every pulse a testament to their resilience, Daniel stood there as a new dawn rose within their hearts. Whatever lay ahead, they had found their bond, stronger than the winter's chill, ready to rewrite their story, together. And as the fire crackled on, Daniel rejoiced in the warmth spreading among them, his heart buoyed by the strength of new beginnings. Little did they know, the long, cold night still had its secrets, but they were ready, and now, they were no longer alone. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support for the channel by hitting that bell for all notifications. Don't wait not even one more second to share this incredible transformation with at least 5 friends who need to see the power of unity and compassion. Leave a like now to help us feed the algorithm, because each click speaks for the story we share together. Comment your thoughts and feelings about this ending. Let us hear your voice in this amazing community.